Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. Welcome to the Storytime channel. My name is Steven, and today we have some malicious compliance stories. Our first story of the day is by Jada92, was told that I was too uneducated to perform my job. When I was a teaching assistant, I used to work as a substitute teacher for very unruly classes, aka the classes licensed teachers wouldn't accept. I had full responsibility, worked all hours, and my numbers showed that my class was making great progress. I just had some bad luck that caused me to not finish teaching college at that time. Because I didn't have my license, my boss came to me one day and talked about how I was actually too uneducated and inexperienced to teach, and that I must have had someone telling me what to do behind me. I told her I didn't, but she didn't believe me and told me she'll be watching me like an eagle to see if I was fraudulent, changing grades and stuff. I never did anything to my students. I'm not a cruel person, and I didn't want anyone implying that I wasn't doing my job as expected. They all got to the next year with scores higher than we would have expected beforehand. But I started to behave like a beginner student teacher to my boss only. Asked really stupid questions like, how can I make my class quiet? I'm really too uneducated to know, so can you please help this teacher out by showing it? Knowing fully well that my formerly disruptive class wouldn't ever listen to her. I called her for everything. A parent wanting to talk to me, a kid who fell down and needed a band-aid, anything. I made sure to tell her I was too uneducated and inexperienced to handle such a task, and I needed to observe a true pro at work. My colleagues got in on it too. They started pointing out everything I wasn't allowed to do, but expected to do, and told my boss that she was being very fraudulent by expecting me to do so. In the meantime, I was discussing gamification, the need for programming in English in primary school, showing older colleagues new teaching methods and digital assistance, all the goodies. After 6 weeks, she was done. She called me to her office and apologized to me for saying that I was too uneducated and inexperienced, and how she was renewing my contract and got some budget to pay for half of my studies. I was happy to tell her I got a new job that would pay everything to get me my license, and I would get full creative freedom without being watched like an eagle. This was 2 years ago. I almost have my license, and I still work at that awesome school that hired me after the allegations of being uneducated and inexperienced at my old job. I even got a reward and a trophy from the board for doing exceptional work and obtaining goals with my students. Do you guys personally agree with the sentiment, people don't leave companies, they leave managers, or people don't leave jobs, they leave bad bosses? Let me know in the comments down below if you think that's all there is to it. Our next story is by Schrodinger's Amoeba, Butts in Seats. I was reminded of this by the mandatory overtime post. I worked at a school in a salaried position. The school hired teachers, including some unlicensed ones, which is extremely rare where I live, counselors, support staff, and residential workers to watch the kids while they were in their dorms. This was a boarding school, high school age. One day, we had a crazy snowstorm, and apparently text messages went out telling staff they don't need to come until the afternoon. I nearly killed myself getting to work since I didn't get the message and then hung out in the staff room waiting for other people to show up. As more people started drifting in between 11 and 12, they too congregated in the staff room. There were no kids in the school, and we obviously had our days planned out beforehand, plans that would now be pushed back a day. So there really wasn't anything to do other than get even more ahead, so we were just chilling. Eventually, word came that the afternoon classes were canceled too. The morning was one thing, it allowed staff, myself accepted, to take their time and get to the school safely. But now that we were here, why not have class? Remember, this was a boarding school. The staff had driven in, but students lived here. After we had made the trip with 0 staff absences, why were we canceling classes on the account of the students sleeping across the hall? Someone asked if we were fine to head home for the day, and the response was, no, you have things to do. This is a salary job, so there's really no upside to watching the clock until 4:30 when there really wasn't anything to do. Our official hours were 8:30 to 4:30, although obviously many worked evenings and weekends and coached teams with no time off in lieu for that. The boss just liked to treat workers as hourly or salary as it suited her. Making us hang out and do nothing? You're paid to 4:30, so you stay until 4:30. Spending a Sunday running a track meet? That's part of the job. No overtime pay or bonuses for salaried workers putting in odd hours. There was no point arguing, so I stood up and, at the door, echoed this. You heard her, we've got plenty to do. While not at all subtly pulling a Nintendo DS out of my back pocket, which I booted up as I walked down the hall past all the empty classrooms in preparation for 4 hours of handheld gaming. I get it for anyone that can use that time in some kind of productive way, but for the majority of them, I assume that there was absolutely nothing for them to do regardless. You're just kind of treating them like slaves at this point. Just let them go home. There's a nasty snowstorm outside. They're not going to be doing anything. They'd just be sitting there. I'm also trying to think of what Nintendo DS game I would be playing for 4 hours, and it would probably be some kind of Pokemon Diamond or Pearl, or it would be maybe a Yu-Gi-Oh game because I can waste tons of time playing that. If you had a DS, let me know what game you would have played. Our next story is by a light vlogging. Certainly, sir, I can get that for you. So the story about the boss wanting staff finished in 15 minutes reminded me of this one. I had a boss like that, and it got so bad I found a new job and handed my 2 weeks notice in. My last shift was a complete mess. Several staff and another manager called in sick, so we were seriously short-staffed. Then, a couple of the big flights got delayed, so we were stupidly busy. I was running between stations trying to keep everything close to functioning, and I'd just finished a stint on the bar taking orders when one of the floor guys told me there was an issue with a customer and they wanted to speak to the manager. I went over and he was kicking off about his food not having arrived. Where's my fish and chips? I ordered fish and chips and I want it now. Now, I'd served him. He was rude at the bar, so I remembered him. And I knew he'd only ordered about 10 minutes beforehand and had been told there was about a half an hour wait on food. Normally, I deal with a situation like this calmly and politely, but as I said, it was my last shift. Cue malicious compliance. I said, certainly sir, I can get that for you. Went into the kitchen and plated up frozen fish, frozen chips, and frozen peas. Took the plate out to him and said, here's your fish and chips. And if you want it freaking cooked, you can wait the half hour I told you it would be when I served you. He was not a happy bunny and started shouting that he was going to report me to my head office and get me fired. I just smiled and told him, you'd best be quick. I cease working for this company in less than 2 hours, and walked away, leaving him with his frozen food. It must be so satisfying to have to work in retail for all that time and deal with jerks like this, and know that for one night, you're completely off the hook because you're gone after that day anyways, and just totally be able to dish it right back to a jerk they knew was a jerk in the past. Our next story is by Yakko Stovian. Want me to mop with mold and mildew? Sure, why not? Edited to add this was years ago. I had just completed tech school and was awaiting to be shipped to my first base. I was on the detail to clean the lobby of the dormitory. Other branches call these barracks, the Air Force calls them dorms. To start, the sergeant in charge demanded that the floors be swept and mopped, because in his words, the lobby was a mud pit. Mississippi at that time of year is rather wet and the grounds were kind of unkempt, so his assessment wasn't unfair. To start, I opened the janitor's closet to find all of the supplies reeked of mold and mildew. I assumed what appeared is that a careless airman put everything away wet in a dark, enclosed room. Possessing an adequately functioning brain, I knew to not mop with a tainted mop and proceeded directly to the sergeant to get a fresh mop and restock the paper towels, which also appeared slightly damp. I say, hey sergeant, I thought I told you to sweep and mop. Yes sir, but… Then get out there and do it. Will do sir, but I was hoping I could get… How hard is it to follow orders, airman? Understood sir. Cue malicious compliance. So I swept and then proceeded to mop the lobby with a mop that reeked of mold and mildew using the pine sol available to me. After I passed his office, he said something along these lines. "What on earth are you doing, Airman?" "Mopping as instructed, sir." "I didn't tell you to spread mildew everywhere. Don't you know how to use a fresh mop?" "We don't have any in the janitor's closet, and the fresh ones are locked up with the office supplies in your office." The guy happened to have an allergy and had to go home early. For the short remainder of my time there, I was not interrupted when I asked clarifying questions. I mean, it kind of serves them right for acting all high and mighty and not letting somebody underneath them just get a complete sentence out. You would think, considering they're a person with allergy issues and the person that they knew they were talking to was dealing with cleaning, they would maybe heed their words a little bit more than that. But they gotta learn the hard way, I guess. This next story is by Sad Little Sponge 13. Get my manager? No problem. For context, I'm a PSA/UM. Passenger Services / Unaccompanied Minor Assisted in an airport. To put it simply, I help both minors, elderly, and the disabled to their next flight. This didn't happen to me directly, but I was somewhat involved and it was funny. This happened just yesterday. I was assisting a disabled woman in one of the airport wheelchairs with possibly finding a seat on the flight as she was on standby. As I'm explaining the situation to my passenger, a heated discussion breaks up between the gate agents and a high-quality Karen. The agents are trying to explain to her that per the airline's policy, masks must fully cover your face from your nose down, and the bandana over her face was not good enough, and they could give her a proper one. Karen argues that she has had this mask on for the past 3 flights and it was never a problem. The gate agents severely doubt her claim. The arguing continues for a minute more before Karen uses the signature line, "Can you go get your manager? I want to speak to someone who knows how to do their job." The gate agent says, "You got it," and almost skips away to find her manager. They both come back over and the manager addresses Karen one more time, as the agent had already given him a quick rundown of the situation. "Ma'am, per whatever airline's policy, your mask must cover your nose and mouth fully. Hanging facial clothes, gas masks, and masks with valves are not permitted. We have extras to give you if you need one." Karen says, "So basically, you don't know how to do your job either." The manager breathes a quick sigh, says okay, and takes over the computer for about 5 minutes before waving me and my passenger on to board the flight. It wasn't until I walked out of the jet lane and seen Karen still standing in the waiting area that it dawned on me. The manager had taken Karen's seat and given it to my passenger who was on standby. Judging from the screaming and cursing after that door closed, Karen didn't realize it right away either. Very smart of the manager to go ahead and do the action and wave the person on before telling the Karen, otherwise it might have gotten really nasty. I think really there's only so much time you can spend standing there arguing while the plane is ready to go, so I have no empathy for this Karen losing their seat to somebody in a wheelchair on standby. And our final story of the day is by An Uncommon Truth. This was years ago when I was a cook at a certain national pizza chain that rhymes with Jabba the Hutt. This one family always called for a large veggie lover's pan every Friday night. They never tipped and always complained. They had very specific instructions that the pizza slicer we used to cut their pizza had not touched any meat, as it was against their religion. We took this very seriously. The place I worked at had a ton of Indian customers in the community, and this was a common request. We had a pizza slicer special for their needs, and it was very appreciated by most. So I cooked the pizza the way I always do, cut it with the veggie/cheese only slicer, and sent it off. It comes back and the driver says, "They said make it again. They can tell you used a meat-contaminated cutter." So you know what? I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I did. Things happen, so I make it again. The same delivery driver goes to deliver it and comes back and says the exact same thing. Well, it's Friday night, and anyone who has cooked at a takeout/delivery pizza joint knows that I'm already in the weeds. So I make another one, picture perfect, and put the pie in the box uncut. Delivery driver came back with a huge smile on his face. They just took the pizza and slammed the door in his face. So we had 2 pizzas to feed to the team that night, and they never sent a pizza back again. Still never tipped and complained a lot though. It's great that they took the concerns very seriously. The thing I don't understand is how would they ever know if they used a meat-contaminated cutter or not? They don't gain anything out of sending the whole pizza back. Maybe they were just hoping to get the pizza for free or something, I don't know. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So which of these stories was your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing and turn notifications on if you haven't so you'll never miss an upcoming video. Any little thing that you do helps the channel grow so much more. Whether it's commenting, subscribing, or just watching the video, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time right here on the Storytime channel.